Welcome to Conversations with Ann Elizabeth, the podcast inspired by my book. I'm a registered dietitian, Now What?, where I have the absolute joy to sit back, relax, and have a conversation about nutrition with a variety of people who share their personal story of passion and purpose, especially registered dietitians. Today's conversation is with Brittany Linn, a registered dietitian who has a passion for nutrition counseling as an Ob-Gyn clinic dietitian. Brittany and I were introduced through a previous podcast guest, Stephanie Dorfman. She's number 134, and I'm so thrilled she connected us. Brittany has had a great career path so far. As a self-proclaimed science nerd, which I thought was great, she started specializing in a care facility as her first career, knowing her draw to clinical nutrition, and then finding her passion for outpatient care, diabetes, gestational diabetes, and starting her own private practice, specializing in an intuitive eating approach. So please enjoy my conversation with Brittany. To finally connect with you. We've had some technical difficulties, but we figured it out. And I'm so glad Stephanie introduced us just via email. And I know nothing about you, so I'm excited to get to know you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about all the things.
That's awesome. Well, I usually get started. Why don't you tell me and my audience just kind of where you kind of came across dietetics as your passion, and how did that all start for you?
So when I was deciding a major in college, I kind of fell into nutrition because I always wanted to do something in the science world. Both my parents are in the medical field, and I knew I didn't want to be a doctor because honestly, I told myself I don't want to touch anybody. I don't want to have to, do any type of procedure or anything like that. It's too much pressure. But I wanted to help people medically in some way. And I was always really enamored by food in general, like how, nutrients work and what happens when you digest something. And so it was honestly pretty easy for me to decide to be a dietitian. And pretty much I was searching online for job titles and it came up right away.
Interesting. So you actually just kind of did like a Google search, basically, that you were like nutrition, medical, health.
Yeah. I didn't even know that there was actually a job title for it until I did a very easy Google search. And then luckily for me, I went right into nutrition as a major when I started at school. So I didn't, start general admission. I started right in the major.
Your school luckily had that major too, so that's great. Sometimes that doesn't always work out.
I know. I made sure, so I started searching for schools that had it because I knew that's what I wanted, and I've been on a pretty straight path with that.
Very good. Where did you go to school at?
So I went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst for 2 years, and then I went to the University of Delaware for 2 years, and that's where I finished.
Okay. So are you from Massachusetts then?
So I'm actually from Pennsylvania. So I started off really far away. I wanted to be, in New England area and do my whole college experience up there. And then it got to be 8 to 12 hour trips, depending on weather, to get home. And it was great. I would go up to visit, but I needed something closer, and Delaware, I loved it. And so I started looking into that school, and I got into the program there, and it transferred over pretty easily. And so then Delaware was my place. Very good. And then where did you do your internship? I've been all over the place. So my internship I did at Long Island University Post, so LIU Post. And so I've lived in Massachusetts, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Long Island. Now I'm living in New York City, but I loved LIU Post. Did you? Well, you're definitely an East Coast girl for sure. Oh, yeah. Well, yes and no. I would love to live in California or something like that. I think that's more my vibe. But yes, that's where I'm comfortable. Yeah, for now. For right now. There's lots of time in the future to head that direction too. Definitely. So after your internship, did you like your internship? I loved it. It was an amazing program.
maybe describe your program a little bit, just for anyone that's maybe an RD-to-be or looking at internship programs. What was kind of your focus?
So it's kind of actually a funny story. I didn't really know about the dietetic internship until later on in my college career. For some reason, I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. And then I sat down with my parents and I pretty much said, I have to go to another year of school, pretty much the way, it kind of evens out that way financially and the work wise. I was like, I have to apply and potentially move somewhere and do this. And all three of us, my parents and myself, were just like, oh, it was kind of a shock to us. So I actually sat down with every single internship program and I had a big binder. I printed them all out and I calculated the likelihood of me getting into each program that I was interested in, based on state and based on my GPA. And I applied based on statistical analysis.
Oh my gosh.
So based on my analysis, which it was they were all very similar and still it's not really always a numbers game. They interview you and they see your volunteer work and what you've done. But LIU was one of my top schools that I was looking into because I liked that they had a clinical focus. And there was also times where you would meet as a group. So you would all spread out and go to your different rotations, but then we would have grad classes together and it was a great group and they made sure that everyone made friends. And actually that's where I met Stephanie and now she's going to be a bridesmaid at my wedding. So yeah.
That's great. Well, I think, you're so right about that. If you have that opportunity to be connected with some interns, you do kind of make lifelong friends that way.
Exactly. And we still have a group on Facebook and we'll connect job wise and that type of thing. And yeah, I highly recommend the LIU post internship. You also have chances to take extra grad classes at the school if you want to get your master's, which soon everyone will need it. Yeah. So it's a great place to do that.
I can't believe you sat down and did all that research. That had to take you some time.
It did. And I wasn't working. So, I was right out of school. Sure. And I was like, well, I don't even know how else to choose. I knew I took out states I didn't want to be at or, sure. Programs I definitely didn't want. I know I wanted clinical. So I took all the clinical based ones. And yeah, I did it by GPA and amount of people they accept.
Well, if anybody wants to know Brittany's system, reach out to her.
I don't even know if it was right.
I think maybe you're not knowing about the internship, maybe less stressed you out during your undergrad, because I think a lot of interns or dietitian students, it's they start and they're like, oh my God, I have to do all these things for my internship in 4 years. Exactly. And maybe that was better for you.
I think it was. I knew I had to get in some shadowing and volunteer stuff, which I ended up doing towards the tail end of my career at school. But, I made it work. And I really would just recommend looking at programs that you like and then just double checking on the GPA to make sure, you'll be able to. Sometimes they take a look at that. Other than that, you don't need to do any math.
Not as intense as you
Don't do what I did. It wasn't worth it. I still got in where I wanted to. I don't even remember what the percentage chance I would have gotten in was.
So it's not that memorable, right?
No.
So tell me, after internship, what was kind of your first role or professional role?
So my very first role was in Pennsylvania. I worked at a place called the Woods Services, and it's a community for kids and adults with mental and physical disabilities. So I worked with adults with traumatic brain injury, and then the population of kids I worked with had what's called Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a rare disease that affects, I believe it's the hypothalamus, and they have some autism. They're usually a bit shorter, and their BMIs are quite high. They also are very predisposed to having diabetes. So I worked a lot with them on behavioral and then also food and where that combines. And so they also have you can look it up. It's a very fascinating disease. They have difficulty managing their hot and cold sensors in their body, and hunger and fullness cues they don't have any awareness of. So it's a place where they have to lock the kitchens and all that kind of thing.
Wow.
So it was a very intense first job, I would say. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, how do you, I don't feel like I would have had any clue how to navigate that role. Just that's some very intense, like physical health conditions.
Yeah. So I would have to say, because of the internship that I was in, because of being at LIU Post, I felt ready, because you get to act as an RD towards the end of your, towards the end of your rotation. So I felt ready, but the way that this particular place is set up, it's blueprint oriented. So you're kind of following the steps to be able to treat each type of client or resident, we would say. And so it was nice to be able to have that and not have to go off on my own too much. But I wasn't actually at that job for too long before I went right into a hospital, which was what I wanted originally. And so after that, I started working in a hospital, and that was, I consider more of that my first job.
Okay. Because how long, you did it for a few months? Was the first job at the
6 or 9 months, something like that, like pretty short. It wasn't my ideal. It wasn't my ideal spot. It's a, nonprofit organization, a lot of volunteers, a lot of kitchen, or how would you say, food service stuff that we had to do on top of just the clinical work. So we would have to close out the kitchen and manage some of the workers in the kitchen. And that just wasn't really where I wanted to be in that food service world. So it was a little bit of both. I just wanted to do clinical.
Okay. You're kind of one of the first people that I've had on here that's like, I just wanted to do clinical, because I think there's a lot of people that's not what they want to do. And it's nice to hear that you're like, I really liked clinical.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because, again, I started my whole nutrition journey as a science nerd, and I continue to be a science nerd. And so clinical, I was so excited. Like when I got my first, I wore a lab jacket. I was so excited to wear it.
Did you get it personalized too? With your day?
Yes, oh, yeah. Absolutely. When they put my name on it at work, I was so excited, and nobody else cared.
You did. It was important to you.
Exactly.
So where was this clinical role at for you?
So I was at Aria Jefferson. It used to be just called Aria, but now it's Aria Jefferson Hospital in Pennsylvania. And I worked as a dietitian on the floors there. And throughout my time there, I covered ICU. I covered the cardiac unit. And then mainly I worked with the oncology unit and the GI surgery unit. So I was doing some really awesome stuff there, and it was really fun.
So talk to me about, and talk to my guest about, because ICU, GI stuff, oncology, that is all very different. It's always different. It's always intense. How do you navigate learning that type of stuff and being able to care for patients that way? And still stay, with all those different things going on, and still stay focused and make sure that you're helping everyone appropriately.
Yeah. So I found it really helpful, and I'm sure inpatient dietitians and even interns at this point have your binder, that you carry around if you're an inpatient dietitian. That was the most helpful thing for me. I would make it super organized. I made my own template. Like I made my own work. It was almost like doing a school, like a study guide. And I would have that with me. And so I knew if I was seeing this type of patient, if they had this, I would, this is what I would recommend. And that's how I kind of started. And I actually made myself a paper, kind of like a script of what to say. If you can't tell, I'm a type A personality. But I made myself a script of what to say so I didn't forget anything when I was interviewing the patient, when I would go into their room. And I mean, obviously, I only needed it for a month or two, but it was really helpful. And I didn't have to feel stressed because I knew I would get all the information I needed. And I could do all the work that needed to be done.
That's a great idea. I had a little notebook thing that I kind of did too, because I did some oncology and it was like a crazy type of surgery, but I was like, I'm going to forget all this stuff. So I'm writing it all down. So we think alike that way.
Exactly.
Did you like the ICU? Did it ever, and like oncology and GI stuff, did it ever scare you? Like, was there anything that you didn't feel like you could handle?
I guess in the beginning, I felt very uncomfortable going into the ICU. I mean, a lot of those patients are intubated, so you're mostly trying to find a nurse or a doctor or a family member trying to get the information. So that's pretty scary at first. And then I guess it's just over time you get used to it. One of the scarier things I'd say, no matter what unit I was working on, for me was speaking to doctors. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's working in clinical or even as a dietitian, as a dietetic intern, it can be kind of intimidating. It might just be me, but that was something like, and they have the most information obviously to give you. A lot of times it takes a little bit of practice to start, talking to doctors, but I made sure I knew exactly what I was going to say before I asked them a question, especially in the ICU and they're running around. But I would say that was even more difficult than the treatment of the patient once I learned our facility standards, because most hospitals have their standards of care. So, based on this, that, or the other, what you're supposed to do nutrition prescription wise.
Sure. I agree with you about the doctors.
Yes.
But as you got into it, did you find that they respected you more because you did talk to them? Did you create a great rapport with them?
Yeah. So back then, and even now, I've worked in teaching hospitals. So there's always residents coming in and out. And I've learned, that as long as you ask a question with confidence, doctors have almost zero nutrition training as of now. I'm sure it's becoming more pertinent as nutrition is becoming more of a big deal in the health world. But they like to pretend that they know sometimes, and you're allowed to question them and, get whatever information you need, no matter how they may be acting.
Yeah. There's always some strong personalities in those situations.
Clear and concise questions when you're talking to a doctor, especially one with a strong personality, is my best advice for that.
I like that advice. So how long did you work in the clinical role?
So I worked at ARIA in just the inpatient world for, I believe it was about 1.5 to 2 years. And then an outpatient role at the same hospital opened up. So that was my first real, technical title of an outpatient dietitian. And so what I did was I worked, 3 days a week in the outpatient role. And then 2 days a week I was inpatient at ARIA. Oh. And so for outpatient, I saw mostly diabetics. I helped teach diabetic classes, and I found my, love and passion for treating people with diabetes. And so I started to log my CDE hours there. And so I taught classes, I counseled on, various things, weight loss, even some pediatrics, renal disease, all over the place for the outpatient. And so I was doing that for a while, actually.
That's an interest. Did you like the variety of having the outpatient and the inpatient, or did that get stressful?
I liked it because you got to change up your pace. So a lot of the acute care stuff, like the inpatient, is very, calculation based. You don't need to talk to anyone for too long. You kind of like put in your calculations, you get all the things done that you need to do, and then you're done for the day. Whereas counseling is more, you put your heart into everything, but you know what I mean? When you're having a conversation with someone and when they're coming back to you for visits, you're more involved in their life in that way. So it's more conversation based. It's more using your counseling skills and all of those things, than actually like giving someone a calculation, to make them, get the proper tube feed or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. So did you ever, before you started your outpatient counseling, did you have diabetes kind of on your radar, or were you really not, that wasn't something you were thinking about?
That was actually something I was thinking about. I was always interested in it, but I wasn't sure how that would work out in my career. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, I think it was from my mom, honestly. And she said, like, there could be jobs out there that you don't even know exist yet. So, don't close yourself off to anything. And so throughout my whole dietetic internship, and even in the earlier part of my career, I didn't say, oh, I want to do this only. I was always open to seeing what else is out there, because there are jobs that dietitians have that you didn't even know are an actual job. You didn't even know they existed when you were, in college or in your dietetic internship. Actually, the job I have right now is probably that job.
That you didn't even know existed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is your current job the next job you had then, or is there something else in between?
No, my current job is the next job. Okay. So yeah, I loved ARIA. I was there for quite a while. I did a lot of cool stuff there. That's where I found my love of outpatient. So when I knew I was going to move to New York with my now fiance, I didn't know he would be my fiance. I just was hoping. I hoped he would be my fiance.
I moved, maybe it'll happen.
Yeah. So we moved in together, and he wanted me to come to New York. And at the time I was like, this could be a really awesome change for me, because I had been in Pennsylvania for a while. And so I was looking for outpatient jobs, and I didn't want to do clinical at all at that point. I only wanted to do outpatient because I loved it so much.
And I think that's the outpatient setting, like you said, those conversations and those connections, and that you just get to know people. And I feel like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like I'm a better dietitian when I have that relationship than just a one and done in a hospital.
Exactly. And so as I became, I guess, more confident as a dietitian, I realized I wanted to help people outside of the hospital to prevent them from coming into the hospital. So seeing both sides of things, I realized preventative care is really the direction I want to go. Seeing how things work, in the hospital in terms of billing or insurance kind of jaded me a little bit, I guess. And so I wanted to be on the preventative side of things, to teach people about different diseases, or even if they're in the early stages, to help them to live a healthy life and a happy life, and not have to be those people that I was treating in the hospital.
Amen to that.
Yes.
I feel the same, 100% the same as you do. That was kind of my clinical transition into outpatient too. So I can very much relate with that.
Yeah.
So when you were navigating moving to New York, what came up, or how did you kind of look for jobs, and what kind of things did you kind of search for on that quest for that outpatient preventative side?
So I knew that I liked my job at ARIA, so I wasn't super rushed, but I started pretty early, and I was like, okay, I have a couple of months. I can wait and see what's going to happen. I came across a a company that does diabetes prevention counseling. It was a startup company, which I really thought that I was going to get that job. And then it turns out because they were a startup, they weren't really hiring. So that kind of took about a month out of my search. And then December came around and holidays, and, it's really no one's really hiring around those times. Yeah. So then December came, and then in January, or maybe I didn't even really try January. And then so February, March, April, I was looking. And so for outpatient, it takes a little while for those jobs to pop up. And I knew that. So I kind of made sure I had the time to wait. But what I also did was I contacted some of the head dietitians from different hospitals in the area just to start getting some connections and just to start having conversations with them so that they knew who I was. And I got that advice from my fiance, who is in the business world. And he's like, sometimes it's who you know, or at least so that they can recognize your name, especially in New York. Just emailing some of the heads of nutrition departments, and give them your resume, even if there's no job posted, just so that they have you in mind.
That's good advice. That's really good advice.
Yeah. And so I was like, I guess I could do that. And so for me, working in this inpatient and outpatient world for a little bit, the language for me to write even a cover letter was so difficult to understand. So I'm lucky I had my fiance, or at the time, boyfriend at the time, to, help me navigate the business side of trying to get in, in a New York competitive market. Right.
Right.
And so absolutely. I actually applied for, in the summer, I applied for 2 jobs. I applied for a bariatric outpatient job at a big hospital in New York. And I applied for an Ob-Gyn dietitian at a big hospital in New York, at the same hospital, actually. And so both of them, I got interviewed. I would literally just drive in one day, go interview, and then drive back to Pennsylvania. And I ended up getting the Ob-Gyn job, and that's where I am now.
I didn't even know that there was Ob-Gyn dietitian.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I didn't either.
Tell me. Yeah. I mean, did you even know that? What was kind of the job? What kind of drew you to that job? What was it about that job?
Well, I was at this point pretty much just saying, I'm going to move to New York. Let me get a job. I want it to be outpatient. It doesn't have to be my forever home. Let me just get in there. Right. And so I found this job, and it was really interesting because what I do now is I work with lower income women. So they're all on Medicare or Medicaid. And I counsel all the pregnant women in this clinic. And I also work with the gestational diabetics. So I got my diabetes stuff in there. I got my counseling. And so it seemed to be the perfect fit. And I love it. That's where I am now, actually.
That sounds so. I would assume your day is packed. Do you have
my day's really packed?
Yeah. So basically, do you have appointments all day while you're there?
So a lot of the times it's interesting. So it's a clinic, which means they have the doctors there, they have their sonograms there, they have their lab work there, they have the nurses there, and they have me, social work. So my schedule is packed, but the times that people come see me are a little bit scattered depending on how long their other appointments might run. So it's busy, but I love it. And for me, like, to be quite honest, growing up and living in Pennsylvania for a while and then moving to New York, and not just moving to New York, but working with women who, are on Medicaid and living in the Bronx and Harlem and, all over the place, it was a big eye opener for me. And I got to connect with people who I probably wouldn't have if I didn't take this job and I didn't move.
I think that's kind of like, I don't know. It's like one of those career paths that you kind of intersect with that you would have never, like you said, you never would have done it. You never would have had that opportunity.
Exactly.
But now you're realizing, holy crap, this is like a really big passion of mine. Do you feel that way?
I do. And so I'm actually getting my master's right now. I'm an online master's of science in community nutrition. So I'm actually learning about all of the government policies and all of the different types of federal, help that people are getting for their nutrition. And so I'm learning it and I'm seeing it every day.
And that's a whole other animal that I don't know anything about, which
I
think
didn't either.
That you're educating yourself about it, because you're right. That whole dynamic of Medicare, Medicaid, low income, nutrition education and nutrition counseling is not something that's readily available for them. And I think that's awesome. Your clinic has hired you to provide that.
Right. So actually it's so when I first started working there, I actually was reading the laws of Medicaid and Ob-Gyn care. And it's actually required that they get nutrition counseling if you're on Medicaid and you're pregnant.
Well, that's awesome. See, I didn't know that. That's
I didn't either.
So it totally makes sense for them to have you in clinic to provide that right there on the spot.
Exactly. And especially, my day to day is I'll see, some general OB patients, maybe a GYN patient here or there if they have maybe PCOS or they want to lose weight for whatever reason they want to try to get pregnant. But the bulk of my clients are gestational diabetics. And so navigating a gestational diabetes diagnosis with testing your blood sugars, being on food stamps, getting WIC, living in maybe not the best situation is what I deal with every day. And it's tough. It's definitely a tough situation for people to be in.
I'm sure you've made some amazing connections with some of these women, though. I'm sure that they have found you to be a fantastic resource for them.
Yeah. And I think at first, no matter what position you're in, when you hear that you have to go see a dietitian, your eyes are probably rolling and you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to her. Exactly. And so, once I actually sit down with the patients, I always try to get them laughing, try to keep it light and, see where they're at, what they're eating, what they're able to eat, what they're able to have access to. And then I just go from there, whatever's going to work with their lifestyle, not what I think that they should do, but what's actually going to work for them.
Well, I'm sure food access and food insecurity and those kind of situations pop up with your job as well.
Yeah. Some of my clients are in homeless shelters. Some of them don't even have a working stove. So we work around it. It's possible. It's not the easiest, but in New York, depending on where they live, we make it work.
Do you help, if someone says, I don't have access to food, do you ever come up with ways to help them with that? Or is that kind of a whole nother different, social work?
Yeah. So we are connected with a WIC office, so we can always give them that. And if it's a real, housing issue, then I refer them straight to the social work team. And they're literally across the hall.
Yeah, that. I love that. I think that's so amazing that you can just be like, oh, I know someone that can help you. And they're right here.
Literally. Yeah. And also a lot of times when I speak to women, depending on how the conversation goes, mental health stuff does come up. And so I've been, I guess one of the dietitians, few dietitians that they've had that actually brings them straight to social work, because I know the connection all too well, of food and emotions and all of that. And I make sure that they get the help they need. And sometimes it's nutrition, but a lot of times it's mental health.
Which we all know dietitians.
Exactly.
We know that is a huge component of our nutrition health and our.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any culture? Was it learning different cultures and, types of food that people consume? How was that kind of challenging for you?
Yeah. So it took me a little while to kind of get, what different cultures eat, especially, for example, some Indian cultures, they'll eat rice and then they'll eat a big piece of, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but roti bread. with it. And so if they're gestational diabetic, I have to see how big did they make the bread? How much rice are they having? Like, what are they eating it with? And a lot of times we'll have Indian, African, and then, everything in between, Mexican, Spanish, all over the place. And so a lot of that is like a rice and a pita or a tortilla or, something like that. And I'm kind of learning how much people serve themselves based on their culture and also what they eat different things with and what's normal. And, sometimes people have a big Sunday dinner or a big party based on cultural, this or that. And so it's definitely been a learning experience, and I'm still learning about it. I never assume like what someone might eat, but it's a good learning experience.
I'm sure it's been eye-opening, just all the different things that you've been exposed to with your clients, and just even working in that clinic as well.
Yeah, completely eye-opening. And even just, as if living in New York wasn't enough, and even just my coworkers, I learned so much from them because they're all different ethnicities and have, different cultural tendencies and things that they do and foods that they cook and all kinds of stuff. So we have parties at the office sometimes for different holidays and birthdays and stuff, and everyone's cooking different things, and it's really cool. Yeah.
That's fun. That's really fun. It sounds like you all get along very well. You all work together really well.
Yeah, we try to work as a team. We kind of have to because of the way it's set up. Like, it's not just ever one appointment. They're always going around, and we want to know the women, their whole story. We don't just care if, they have diabetes. We care if their sonogram looked okay, if they're, emotionally stable, if they're being compliant and that kind of stuff. So we always try to make sure to stay as a team.
Sure. How do you choose like continuing education and, things that you want to keep furthering your education on, specifically with this population?
So I do a lot of diabetes continuing education, but recently I've started actually my own private practice on the side, if I wasn't doing it.
Like, you don't have enough to do.
Yeah. So I started a private practice on the side. I do virtual counseling, and I do a lot now of mindful eating and intuitive eating research and continuing education, because from what I found in my career and in working with people is that's really the best way to get people to make lifestyle changes and to teach them how to trust themselves. And I'm one of those anti-diet dietitians.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to, do research on that so that I can talk to people about why it works and how it works. And I know a lot of the research is pretty new, but, as if someone was talking to another person about a certain diet, they'd have research to back it up. And so I like looking at the most recent stuff on mindful eating, intuitive eating, that kind of thing, so that I can talk to my clients about that.
Well, you are a science nerd, so
yes.
Research is very important, which is
yes.
good.
I'm in my research class right now, actually. So I'm learning all the ins and outs of the statistics.
Yeah, I bet you are loving that because that's after you get done with the class.
Yeah, exactly. There's a point. I like to read it. I don't necessarily need to do it.
Right.
But yeah.
So it's kind of just a good segue into kind of what you see in the future for yourself. So it sounds like private practice might be where you're kind of headed, or do you see yourself staying at the clinic and doing both? What does that kind of look like for you?
So my private practice is kind of my baby right now. It's called Brittany Linn Nutrition, and I started it over the summer, but I did a lot of prep work, starting an LLC and doing all that, background stuff, making sure I was licensed correctly. And so I started Brittany Linn Nutrition, I would say, honestly, July, somewhere around there. And in the future, I really hope that can be like my main thing. I am going to stay at the clinic for a little bit, probably maybe moving eventually out of New York City, and that's when I would probably leave the clinic. But ideally, my ideal life is to run Belin Nutrition and to see clients virtually through this platform, and to just help people counseling wise and outpatient wise, preventative medicine, diabetes, all that kind of stuff, but on my own, on my own way. My own way. And, it would be doing that. And then I love spin classes. So I'm training to be a spin instructor. So I also do that.
I love spin classes too. I think they're amazing. Like, they're kind of addicting. So I think that's great that you're doing that too. Okay. Yeah. I really have to say, I think you have a lot. I think you're getting married. You're getting your master's, you're starting your own private practice, you're working a full-time job. I think you're kind of like all over the place.
I'm at capacity.
You are at capacity.
I'm at capacity. Oh, and to rest and relax and to be a good fiance.
Yeah.
I have to. Yeah. But it's all exciting. And, when it's stuff that you want to do, it doesn't, take from you, it gives to you. So it gives you energy. All these things I like to do. So I'm enjoying it, but I don't think I could add another thing.
I think, when do you get married?
Next September of 2020.
Okay. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope she's kind of like spacing that out a little bit too.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And luckily my mom is my wedding planner. By accident. Well, not by accident, but she just decided.
She said, take some stuff off your plate.
Exactly. So I'm lucky for that.
Well, I think for all your outpatient experience, you've done so many different things, and you've educated yourself, and you've specialized, and you just really, I think you'd be a fantastic person to do private practice and do virtual counseling, because I feel like you could do any type of disease state or any type of health condition as in a virtual practice, because you've had so much exposure.
Yeah. And so it was actually kind of hard to find my niche market. I was told you have to narrow it down. And I was like, but I like all these things, and I can do all these things because I've done them. But yeah, I'm working on that narrowing down, but I can see a wide array of people. Maybe you'll have your specialties, but you'll be like, and open to other health. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yes. And I've learned that you kind of have to, because you can't market to everybody.
And I don't feel like you want to turn people away either, especially if you really, say you did have someone that had a GI, disorder, and you really could help them with your past experience. You're not gonna be like, oh no, I can't help you.
Yeah, exactly.
I really just specialize in this. You maybe won't advertise it as a primary thing, but
it's definitely in the list of can-dos.
Because you have that experience. So
exactly,
I think that's a great thing too. Mm-hmm. Well, I think I am not knowing anything about you. You're very inspiring, and just all the things you have going on, and
thank you.
All the work that you have put into just educating yourself and having those experiences and working in a variety of places and taking the leap and moving to a new city and trying something different. That's not easy.
No, it is not. I would say the hardest part of moving to New York is, for me, and probably I don't even know for anybody else, was the subway system. I was deathly afraid of going somewhere, off the beaten path, even though all you have to do is come back the other way. But that was my biggest anxiety from moving. Honestly, not the work, not the new job, not living with my fiance. It was the subway.
I think that would make me crazy too. I mean, coming from not any, there's no really public transportation where I'm from. So, I mean, there's a bus, but that's easy.
Right.
I would be totally scared too. I'd be scared I'd get lost, and yeah.
I was so afraid. But then I realized it's literally just up and down or over. That's it.
All you need to know.
That's really all you need to know. That's the secret.
Well, on to my hard questions. I think I asked you enough of those. Why don't you share with me some of the foods that you enjoy?
So my ultimate favorite food is really boring and very dietitian-y, but I've always been addicted to carrots.
Really?
I can eat them with everything. They're my favorite food. You can ask anyone. That's my, I'm addicted to carrots. But my other like favorite food that I don't eat every day, but I'm obsessed with soft pretzels. Love like a good soft pretzel.
Yeah. Oh, I'd be with you on that.
Yes.
Have you ever had peanut butter and carrots? Do you ever eat those two things together?
I do. That. I actually do sun butter and carrots.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So good. I used to do that in college all the time, and now it's my like afternoon after work snack.
I like it. My mom used to feed us that for a snack after school, and everybody thought we were weird. And I'm like, it's delicious.
It's so good. Oh, I'm so glad that you do that too, because no one else. Yeah.
Yeah, no one really does that.
It's so good. Yeah.
Share with me some beverages that you enjoy.
So my ultimate beverages, I'm sure everyone on your podcast says this, coffee. I love coffee. Love coffee. I try to only drink, like I'll drink it throughout the day. So I try not to have too much. Like I'll drink one, 16 ounce or whatever throughout the day. But just ice water, like ice cold water. Some people like my fiance hates ice water, but just when it's nice and cold, I think it's because when I was younger, whenever I was upset, my mom always just used to say, "Do you want a cold drink?" And it's just like, it's comforting, like a cold drink, like it's such a nice thing to have.
That's sweet. That's a sweet memory. And it probably is a comfort for you because that's how she kind of comforted you down or calmed you down.
Exactly.
Aww,
yeah.
I like that. What scents do you enjoy? Scents or smells?
So I know I keep mentioning my fiance too. So we
What's
actually,
his name, by the way,
his name is Ben. His name is Ben.
So Ben, we'll just call him Ben now.
yeah. So Ben and I met at overnight camp when we were 12, and then we reconnected when we were older. But there was a smell from camp, and it was in the morning. So in the morning in the woods. And it was just the most calming, like summer morning at camp was just the best smell. And sometimes not in New York, but sometimes I'll be walking, maybe when I'm visiting at home, or we have a place in the mountains that we sometimes go to. And that morning woodsy summer smell is my favorite.
And it probably maybe because that's when you met Ben too.
Yes, but it was my favorite before Ben, unfortunately. but just to set the scene. But now he understands that smell too. I'll be like, it smells like camp. He'll be like, yeah, it does.
I got it. He's like, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Do you have favorite colors or a color?
So my favorite color is aqua blue, actually.
Color. Is that what your monogram was on your clinical? Was it?
Yeah. So it's aqua blue and a little bit of green, but I had to put it somewhere. I was like, it's not super aesthetically pleasing. Like if you're, it's hard to work with sometimes, but I had to put it somewhere. So I put it on my Ob-Gyn nutrition logo.
I like it. You should always incorporate a little splash. That's why I always ask that question, because I think that says a lot about your personality of where you put like in your logo or your branding or it does make sense. So
yep, that's where it is.
And what brings you joy in life, Brittany?
So what brings me joy in life is being able to help people to feel happy in general and help people to feel in control and trusting of themselves. That's, in the career world, that's what makes me feel good. In my personal life, it's being able to just be in the moment, which is very hard. But being able to be with Ben, be in the moment, enjoying the little things in life, and reading in bed always brings me joy. Oh,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think with all the stuff you have going on, you're appreciating the small things like reading in bed and just being present in every day is important.
It's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard when you have a lot going on. But that really does bring me joy.
Well, I've talking to you has brought me joy today. So it's great to talk to you and getting to know you. And I look forward to following your journey and seeing where things take you. And I wish you the best. And I hope we get to meet in person someday.
Yeah.
I think so highly of Brittany and the work she has done so far in the inpatient and outpatient space. It's tough to kind of bounce between the two, but she is doing an amazing job. She has had some great experiences and she's given some great advice about being in the clinical setting. And I appreciate the light she shed on being open to different jobs, because you never know about a job because they might not even exist yet, or you might not even know they exist. So always be open, because it could be your next passion. Make sure to head over to the show notes and connect with Brittany on her website, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My website, AnnElizabethRD.com, is where you can read my latest Embrace the Hell Yeah blog post, as well as all my previous podcast guests, show notes, and links to things we talked about during all my conversations with these great nutrition experts. My book is also available for purchase on my website, and I hope we can connect more on social media by finding me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest at AnnElizabethRD. Remember to be great always, find the joy in each day, and to start a conversation that truly matters.